Okay, welcome class. We're up to chapter 2 in our organizational behavior and management course, national and organizational culture. Ooh, love that. Organizational culture. In my management class, we go very much into corporate culture, organizational culture. Culture is the way we do things and how we roll, so to speak. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, and it's a very, very important topic. I honestly feel that when somebody invests in a company, besides looking at the books, which is extremely important, don't get me wrong, I'm not one of these like fluffy kind of guys, like, yeah, just look at the corporate culture and doesn't matter whether they made money or not. Yes, it does make a difference whether or not you made money historically. But equally as important, you also got to look at things like turnover ratio, see if people are leaving the organization, who's running it, how is it being run, is it in the top, let's say 100 places that people want to work or 200 places that people want to work? Where does it rank? How does it look like on Glassdoor? Are people mad about this place? Are they angry? And these are the things that you need to consider. So we're going to the next slide, learning objectives. And by the way, did you notice if Diana clicked in? Okay, it's out there. Give examples of how national culture and values influence workplace behavior. Describe the key components and layers of organizational culture. Man, you would think that culture is not this complicated thing, but there's layers. It's a complicated. It's almost like an organism, if you will. Explain the various methods that managers use to influence cultural change. Identify ways in which socialization sustains organizational culture, and compare the characteristics of effective socialization. She clicked in?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Diana, I hope you're here. If you want to chime in, Diana, you want to just sound off, make sure you're okay, you can hear? Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, you're here but not here. Good. All right,
Yeah,
sorry. We're
you
sorry.
See me?
No, I don't see you. So that's fine. You don't.
Why don't you see me?
Because I have.
Or you have to see me.
No, you don't have to be seen. But the thing is that I just moved your little icon to the bottom of the page so that I could have the full screen. And you see, are you able to see the screen here? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see everything right
Great.
now.
Great. So that's fine. I know who you are. And we're recording live right now.
I'm here. I'm just letting you know.
Okay, good. If you have any questions, feel free to chime in. This way our viewers in future classes can know how friendly we are here and how we make sure that no one's left out. Okay. And we even got the police out there chasing people. A very exciting class over here. All right, introduction. Now,
we're still in chapter 1?
Chapter 2. All right, let's make sure we're in chapter 2. We are in chapter 2.
Yeah.
So, there's going to be a term that's thrown at us over here. Oh man, there's just a lot of stuff going on over here. Anthropologists. Now, anthropology, anybody know what anthropology is? We kind of discussed this last week. What is anthropology?
The study of cultures.
Cultures and how they evolved. And, okay, we're not talking about evolution here. We're not going to get involved. But cultures definitely evolved. I mean, we definitely were hunter-gatherers at one point. Then we got into agriculture, and then from there we moved into little villages and then towns and cities and metropolis. All right, that definitely happened in history. So, and it's very important when you study courses in management and marketing to understand the evolution of man's behavior.
Right.
All right? So anthropologists propose that culture is learned and shared, defines the boundaries of different groups. And we have that even within our own groups and our own religious institutions. There's variegation. Anybody know what the word variegation means? Variegation means, yeah, there's variations, there's groups. So everybody, if you take any group, any culture, all right, even within the same culture, I'm going to use just, for example, Orthodox Judaism, because I'm an Orthodox Jew, so I kind of know a little bit about Orthodox Judaism. You have people that are Hasidic, you have people that are Sephardic, Ashkenaz. Those are those are some of the categories. But even within, let's say, Hasidus, you'll have Lubavitch Hasidim, you'll have Satmar Hasidim, you have Belz, and you have variegation there. You have even in the Orthodox community within Ashkenaz, you'll have modern Orthodox. You'll have, quote-unquote, yeshivish, people that are identify themselves as what we call black hats. So there's various groups within groups. And each group has its own culture and subculture. Even with respect to people that come from out of town. How many people? Oh, you're from LA, right?
Yeah.
So would you say, as somebody from LA, that LA is different than New York in many different ways? Anybody here else from out of town? Yeah, you're really out of town. You're from what, Belarus, right?
Yeah.
That's out of town. So you're born here?
Born here.
Born in the USA, Springsteen would say?
Born one.
What about you? Where are you from?
Silver Spring, Maryland.
Okay, so Silver Spring, Maryland. You don't think there's a difference between Silver Spring and Baltimore?
What?
There's a difference between Silver Spring and Baltimore, right? Yeah. Baltimore versus New York? Absolutely. Five Towns versus Flatbush? Borough Park versus Williamsburg? Of course there are differences. Down south, definitely. Even within the Latin community, you know, if you come from one country versus another country, it's a totally different culture. So the same is true within organizations. Organizations have various cultures. The culture in Amazon is nothing like the culture in Google, and the culture in Google is absolutely nothing like the culture of Apple. All right, so there's different variations there. A national culture is the sum total of the beliefs, rituals, rules, customs, artifacts, and institutions that characterize the population of a nation. Artifacts is anything that we could kind of tag ourselves to. You know, if 1,000 years from now they found a baseball bat with a signature on it, they'd know that this is probably either an American society or maybe Canadian. It's definitely not France. Okay? Why? Because that's an artifact. If I were to find that, if you go downstairs to my office, you'll see signed baseballs, signed basketballs. Those are my personal effects and my own artifacts. They identify what I'm interested in. So if this place got buried over time and archaeologists 10,000 years from now would find my office, they would know that whoever occupied my office space was into baseball. That would be something that would tag us. Just like in real archaeology, when they find coinage, right? They find something from the time period of Alexander the Great, or they find something from the pharaohs, they're able to identify which era it came from. Values are the guidelines and beliefs that a person uses when confronted with a situation in which a choice must be made. Now, I'm going to kind of add to this. It's not just values, it's values/ethics. Ethics is your personal GPS, your spiritual GPS, without getting too spiritual here. It helps you, along with your values. In other words, they kind of work hand in hand, help you make decisions. And the decisions that you make will reflect who you are as a person. The choices that you make will speak volumes of who you are. If you choose an ethical path, that says a tremendous thing about you. If you choose to be, the one chooses to be unethical and arrogant or whatever, that's going to, their choices will definitely explain what they're all about. All right. Managers must understand national and organizational cultures. Both affect how transactions are conducted. Now, when we talk about national cultures, I'll give you an example. Many years ago in my management course, there was this really cool part on my portal for the course. I can't find it anymore. And maybe I can't even get access to my old textbook. I really wish I could. It was called Management Hot Seat. And they would have these role plays between, different situations. They would have a layoff situation. They would have harassment in the workplace. And then they had something like a national culture thing. So you had this American executive trying to close a deal. Now, Americans are very, let's get to business. So he's sitting there talking to this Japanese man, this executive, and he's trying to rush the guy, clearly. And then the Japanese guy starts asking him questions, not about the contract. He starts asking questions like, do you like eel? And the face that the American executive made was like, no, I'm kind of more of a cucumber roll guy. Like he was being a little bit silly with him. And he's like, do you like golf? And he's not getting it. The Oriental, the Japanese mindset, business is like a relationship, like a date. You don't get married after one date. You go out a couple of times. You make sure that you like the person. And then maybe, there's a future there. And the same is true in the business realm. Like, I need to know that we have a commonality, where there's something that we share. So at the end of that role play, the Japanese guy said, come, I'll invite you to Japan. I'll take you out to sushi. I'll go golfing with you. Maybe we'll do something else together. This way he can feel comfortable. And the American person did not understand the Japanese culture of being close in business. Because, yes, we do have an element in the American culture for that, especially in finance. I was talking to a banker the other day, and he told me that his friend gets into trouble if he doesn't use his budget for every client. He'll have like a $5,000 annual budget to entertain his clients, and if he doesn't entertain a client, at the end of the year, he better buy him a bunch of gifts, like expensive champagne, liquor, whatever else the person's into. Because a part of our culture is to wine and dine prospective clients. Take them out to a ball game, get them, something expensive for their desk, a fancy pen, a Mont Blanc pen, whatever it is. But that's a part of our national culture as well. So, adaptation to new environments involves learning new values, processing information in new ways, working with established norms, customs, and rituals. That's why if you are going to be taking over a foreign account, if you are going to be going to a foreign country, it behooves you to understand their customs, vis-a-vis, very important, even their religions. Even though one may feel uncomfortable studying other religions, I'm not telling you to study their theology and be well versed in their canon, but to just kind of understand things so that you don't insult them. For example, in Islam, it is, obviously people that are religious Muslims don't drink any alcohol. So you would have to know that, because if your client is a Muslim, you're not going to take him out to some bar somewhere in the city and start drinking shots with him. And you're not going to take him somewhere and give him pork chops. That much you should know. You should know enough about the other person's culture / religion just not to insult them. And even if because you only get one chance to do the right thing, and it's very, very, very important. I can give you personal examples how I didn't know about people's religions and how silly I was at the end. I mean, I'm not going to go into it now. I'll tell you that off video, but it's very important because you can make a fool out of yourself. All right, next slide. Culture and societal value systems. Organizations operate efficiently only when shared values exist among employees. Everybody has to be on the same page. You can't have what we call a jam session where everyone's doing their own thing. Everybody has to be consistent. Everybody has to be on the same page, doing the same thing, and connected. And there has to be a certain level of synergy where everyone's doing, creating a common path for each other. Values are the conscious, effective desires, I like that, or wants of people that guide behavior. It's conscious. If it's very strong, it really almost becomes unconscious. Come on, we all do things within our own cultures automatically, don't we?
Yeah.
Whether it's prayer, whether it's customs, whether it's even mannerisms or the foods that we eat, right? We have a Shabbat meal or certain foods that we eat. We don't pay attention to it. Sometimes it's just unconscious. But when we get integrated, right, when we're taught, when we're little kids, we're conscious about it. We're picking up on it. The same is true in cultures within organizations. So values are society's ideas of what is right or wrong, good or bad, appropriate roles for men and women, for example, passed along through education systems, religions, families, communities, and organizations. And just as a historical footnote, religions ran countries. The Catholic Church ran Europe for many, many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. All right? The Anglican Church ran England. All right? Islam ran many, many Islamic countries and still does in certain countries. So religion is not something that is, it's just a religious belief. I'm not so religious. I go to synagogue or church once in a while. I go to the mosque once in a while. No. It is a very, very strong aspect of culture. Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Hofstede studied cultures. Power distance. Power distance, simply defined, is the distance between the rich and the poor. Okay, if there's a lot of distance, if there's a great amount of distance between rich and poor, such as a certain certain Latin American countries, where you could literally have villas surrounded by slummage. You have kids picking through the trash to find something to eat. It's like unbelievable. You have this in Indonesia as well, where you have squalor and luxury living side by side. In America, yes, you do have neighborhoods that we would consider to be places we would never step foot in. But even in those neighborhoods, for most of those neighborhoods, you have food, you have running water. Yes, and there may be crime, and it may not be the cleanest, nicest place, but it's nothing compared to a third world country. It's far better. In America, the power distance is cut because we have social programs such as Medicaid, food stamps, right? Things like that prevent the poor from falling off the grid. I mean, if you just look at a historical perspective, go back to the French Revolution. One of the big problems of the French Revolution was there was no middle class, a very small middle class. The middle class is the beachhead, which divides the ocean, which prevents the ocean from overrunning, going inland. If you don't have a middle class, you're in a lot of trouble. And if you allow the poor to get so poor that they can't afford the basics, well, then you'll have violence, you'll have rioting. I mean, it's a scary thought. Imagine if all social programs in America ended overnight. Medicaid, food stamps, you would have maybe 50, 60, maybe even 100 million, I don't even know the numbers, but you would have millions of people running around looking for food and shelter. What do you think will happen? I'll tell you what will happen. It will be anarchy. You'll have to not just have tissues in your pocketbook, you'll have to carry a revolver. You'll have to carry, not mace, a grenade. It won't be normal. Society, and that's why you have so much crime in a lot of these third world countries, because of poverty. Poverty leads to, the drug cartels. Why do you think, Pablo Escobar, I don't know if that name rings a bell, was loved by so many people, hated and loved. Loved because he took the poor and he took care of them. He built them housing. He took care of them, did stuff for them. Yes, he was a murderer and a cutthroat, but he also had that part where he wanted to take care of his people, obviously for selfish reasons, because he wanted to build loyalty. Uncertainty avoidance. Some countries are into risks. Some countries are not into taking risks. Masculinity versus femininity. Individualism, right? Do we look at the individual or more into the common good? Individualism is definitely something, and again, communism looked nice on paper, but when you opened the hood, it was rotten at the core. The people in the party were no different than the capitalists. No different. Only difference was that they pretended. The capitalists never pretended to be something other than being capitalists. Stalin ate well. Beria ate very well. Beria was not eating gruel with the people on the Russian steppes. He was not shivering in Siberia, but he had everything. He had everything that you could imagine. Short versus long orientation. Am I going to eat, drink, and be merry for tomorrow we die, or do we have savings? There are people in this country that have no savings. God forbid they were to lose their job; they'd be penniless within weeks. So those are things that we look at. Those are things that Hofstede looks at, cultural dimensions, and those cultural dimensions seep into the corporate culture. I can have the same company. I can have Google located in Brooklyn, New York, and Google located in South Africa, and the people there will be totally different. I could have Google located, I could have a company, any company, it could be Google, any company, located in New York City and located in Texas. I could tell you one of the things that'll be different is the way that people dress. It would not be crazy that on Friday, you have Dress Down Friday, whereas, let's say, in New York, you'd have maybe T-shirts and jeans. Maybe there they would wear cowboy hats and cowboy boots. And they may even come in when they're formally dressed with their jeans and cowboy boots and a nice jacket and a nice, whatever you call those little neckties that they have, those that kind of look like a bow. Because that's a part of their culture. And they would never, nobody in New York City would dare dress like that because they'd be looked at as strange. All right, next slide. Cultural dimensions. And Diana, or anybody, if you have a question, please feel free to stop me. I don't want to just talk for an hour by myself. And please, everyone chime in, because otherwise everyone's going to think that I'm not really giving a class, I'm just doing this by myself. All right, cultural dimensions.
A lot of this we did covered in ethics, so I take your own.
There's, yes, and also this is covered in one of the chapters in Principles of Management. Because remember, ethics is a part of an organization. Right. So is culture. So this is kind of an intersection between a couple of different courses. Good point. Cultural dimensions. Society's values impact organizational values because of the interactive nature of work, leisure, family, and community. So there's no way to avoid that. That's going to seep in. That's why people, at work will be very into sports, politics. Oh, what'd you do on the weekend? Oh, it's your birthday? Happy birthday. What'd you do? Like, I have some people that follow me on Facebook, so they're all saying happy birthday to me at work. My birthday on Sunday, and everyone's like, oh, happy birthday. What'd you do?
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Happy birthday.
I'm an old man, I know. At 47, this is what I've become. A college professor. I could have turned out worse.
I can think of worse things.
Yeah. Society's values, again, impact organizational values because of the interactive nature of work, leisure, family, and community. 2.1, Exhibit 2.1 is a sample of Hafsi's research on culture. So you'll take on the left side you have the dimensions which we spoke about, for example, long-term orientation, individualism, etc. We'll have high, medium, and low as the intensity, and examples of countries. I'm going to zero in on Israel for a second here. And just, oh, they even got a good light over here. Oh, actually, you can't even see it. Israel is low on power distance. Interesting. Okay, let's look at Malaysia, high in power distance. Why? Because Malaysia is a poor country, so you can have a high amount of power distance between the rich and the poor. And in Israel, there's less poor. There are poor in Israel, trust me. You go to some neighborhoods, you go to Bnei Brak, you go to Meir Sha'arim in Jerusalem, you will see poverty. But that is not indicative of the general Israeli culture. In America, for example, okay, you're going to have also a low amount of power distance because of what I said before. You have all these social programs. Anyway, take a look at 2.1. There's some really cool, fun facts over there, and you could, have fun looking at that. Organizational culture defined. We've been talking about culture, so let's define it. Culture can be sensed or felt, and it's true. Haven't you walked in? How many of you went to summer camp? Okay? Did you ever have that feeling that, oh my God, it's going to stink this summer. I don't feel comfortable in my bunk.
Yep.
I don't feel comfortable in my classroom. What is making you feel uncomfortable? There's something called a similar to me effect. That you feel comfortable around people similar to you. That doesn't mean that you can't make friends with other kinds of people, with people outside of, let's say, your religion or outside of your society, but usually people tend to feel more comfortable with people of the same ilk, if you will. So you could feel it, you could sense it, and you'll feel either very comfortable or very, very uncomfortable. Okay, so culture can be sensed or felt, but not seen. Well, it could be seen, but it won't. It's not. It's seen through different manifestations, such as the way we speak, the way we dress, the way we act. It consists of attitudes, emotions, perceptions, influences, behavior, attitudes, and effectiveness. There is no single definition of a culture. It involves assumptions, adaptations, perceptions, and learning. It includes symbols, language, ideologies, rituals, and myths. Every society has myths. Okay? Creates patterns of beliefs, values, and expectations. Let's look at not just language. There's another thing I would even stick in here. Gesticulation, right? Hand movements. There's certain cultures, like Italians, they talk a lot with their hands. Israelis also, they use a lot. They're very emotional. They talk with their hands. I remember. Do me a favor, Diana. If you're not asking a question, put yourself on mute because I hear background noise. Thank you. I remember when I first went into Israel, somebody made a gesture like this to me, and I had no idea what it meant. I didn't know if it was. I'll tell you the story. It was cute. I went into a bank and I asked to open an account, and the teller wasn't even looking up at me, which I thought was rude. And it wasn't rude because in Israel, if you're busy with something, it's kind of like an understood thing that you don't interrupt someone when they're busy. For some reason, I guess in America, it's okay to interrupt people. I don't know. And she looked up at me and she said like this to me. She went like this to me. And I don't know. I didn't know what that meant. I thought she was doing something obscene, like something that you would do to someone if you cut them off in traffic. Okay. So I'm like getting all flustered. I want to see a supervisor, being rude. She obviously understood that I'm an American, not getting Israeli culture. So she explained to me that this means, as I say, savlanut, which means patience. I also noticed an interesting thing in Israel, that when people hitchhike, instead of in America, we hitchhike like this. In Israel, they take their hands and they point it down like this. And I asked somebody, so they explained that this is an obscene gesture in Israel. So again, it depends on the culture. It depends on where you're coming from. Symbols, words, okay, colors, white as a wedding dress is not necessarily in every single society. Some societies, I think it's China. Maybe I'm wrong.
India too. They were red saris.
Red saris, and I think in
Asian
China.
too, yeah.
Again, everything depends on the culture. So it really behooves you to really study the national culture of the organization that you'll be doing business with. So let's say you're an American executive, but you're assigned an account with a foreign company or even a foreign subsidiary of your company. It behooves you to understand what's going on. If they're into something and you want to buy them a gift, find out what do people from this country do and what do people eat. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I was in Israel. I was studying there. And so, I don't know, I got kind of friendly with the British guys. And they were eating something called Marmite. I don't know if you know what Marmite is. It looks like the stuff they paved.
Jam?
It's not jam. It is used like jam. It's spread on bread. Basically, it's yeast extract. And everyone's doing yeast extract? Yuck.
Is that like
Looking it
Vegemite?
up.
Vegemite, exactly. It is Vegemite. Vegemite is what they use in Australia, and this is what they use in England. And they're like, you spread it on bread and you spread it on bread like jam. You put it on your buttered bread, and it's delicious. And I'm like, okay, I'm this gullible American. Let me try it. And I was gagging. It was terrible. But after a while, I'm like, listen, they like it. It's not a joke. It must taste good. Let me try it. After a week, I really, really liked it. And to this day, I enjoy it. So just the food that you eat, where in one country it's absolutely, take your average American, you give them Marmite, they'll throw it in the garbage. Like, why are you giving me mold? In other countries, I mean, there's something called blue cheese. Blue cheese is moldy cheese. Mm-hmm. I mean, you tell somebody, you want some moldy cheese? They'll look at you, no, I'd like fresh cheese. Again, culture, what people eat. Go to Israel, look at the cuisine. Everyone's eating falafel. Everyone's eating shawarma. Why? Because that's the standard fare over there. And if you went down south in America, they fry everything. They'll fry pickles. They'll fry. I was joking with somebody from down south. I bet you take no-fat cottage cheese and just fry it because it have to add flavor to it. Again, it's a cultural thing. Even in Russian culture, which I'm familiar with, there's certain delicacies.
Холодец.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, blintzes. They eat shashlik. Like this, like shish kebab thing, and people love it.
There's also a delicacy that's like stuffed intestines, which I find disgusting.
Okay, but that may be something that would be found in one part of Russia, not in another part of Russia. Also, the way that they socialize at events, everything makes a big difference. Schein's definition of culture: a pattern of basic assumptions invented, discovered, or developed by a group as it learns to cope with the problems of external adaptation and internal integration. And in today's day and age where we have this global economy, we have a lot of that. And it's a struggle. That's why America's a little bit easier, because America by nature was always a melting pot. The only Americans that existed were the American Indians. Everybody else that came to America was a de facto immigrant. All right? It has worked well enough to be considered valid. It's taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to those problems. So culture shapes the way that we think and the way that we feel. I'll give you an example. I mean, without going into which country, because that may be offensive. It may be that I'm being biased, but it is possible to speak in a certain way in one culture, and it would be innocuous and no one will get insulted. For example, you may see a husband and a wife interact in one culture, and you may say to yourself, oh my God, that's abusive. How could you speak like that? Right? And then in another culture, that will be considered normal. Why? Because maybe in your culture, you view that interaction, without getting too specific, maybe, for example, somebody may be sarcastic to someone, and you're like, that's not nice. It happened to me today, at my office today, where somebody at work made a comment. Wanted to know what day it is. And then the person made a sarcastic comment. It's Tuesday, and usually Wednesday follows Tuesday. And the person got really insulted. And they turned to me and said, it's because you're a guy, you're just offending guys. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, because I know the person, and he was just being cute, and that's his type of humor. So even humor could be misconstrued or taken a certain way. Also, certain cultures, people talk louder. Certain cultures, people talk softly.
Israelis talk pretty loud.
Depends. And certain cultures, talking loud doesn't mean that you're angry. Like I remember I had a boss who spoke very loud and he was very animated. I'm like, I would tell him like, dude, let's call him Paul. It wasn't his name. I said, Paul, why are you yelling at me? He goes, no, I'm so sorry. That's just the way I am. I'm very passionate about the way I speak. Because I didn't know him well. I was a new employee, and he's yelling at me. And it's like, I just wanted to know if he wanted a cup of coffee. What? Like I had this with a boss of mine. He would text me. Everything would be capital letters and exclamation points. Yes, no, absolutely. I'm like, why are you yelling? Again, I guess because in our culture, we know texting, when you text, and you text with capital letters and an exclamation point, that means you're emphatic and maybe even yelling at a person. So again, another element of culture. So Shine's definition of culture, culture has worked well enough to be considered valid, because it exists, and is taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to those problems. So you will actually be indoctrinated to think a certain way within an organization. Just like one can be indoctrinated when they join a culture. Somebody converts to another religion, let's say, or just somebody, even not something as dramatic as that, somebody moves to a new country. Eventually they start learning that this is the way people act, speak, behave. This is not rude. I thought it was rude in my country. Here it's accepted. Okay? Organizational culture and its effects. Organizational culture involves shared expectations, values, and attitudes, so it exerts influence on individuals, groups, organizational process. Influence can be positive or negative, weak or strong. You could have a very, very positive culture. You could have a toxic culture. And, by the way, you can have toxicity at work based on the mindset of how people are hired. Now, I preach this all the time, so if I sound like a broken record, I'm not. I'm just trying to tell you how important this is. Most people that I've come in contact with hire based only on skill fit. That means that if you know the job, you have more, in other words, let's say Ahuva has 15 years experience and Zoya has 10, I'm automatically going to hire Ahuva whether or not Ahuva is the right cultural fit for the organization. It could very well be that Zoya here will fit in better with the company as an individual. However, will not fit in well with Ahuva, although she has better skills, will totally be at odds with the organization. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but you know what I mean. And I saw this. I saw this myself. Like, for example, many years ago, I worked for an organization where I had to hire people that needed to teach. I was the training director, and I was trying to hire instructors. And I had the one that I ended up hiring was the one, not that was the most knowledgeable in various teaching methods, was the one that I felt had that background, had creativity, but fit in. And had I hired the other people, it would have been a disaster. How did I know that? Because I had somebody on staff that was the driest, that individual was like a styrofoam cup giving lectures. You could think of the most boring person giving lectures. Now, I inherited that person, and I wasn't going to fire them because they were good. They knew their job well. But the issue is like, if I'm going to hire somebody, it better be somebody that'll fit in really, really, really well.
How do you gauge whether someone fits in through like one interview? Like, how do you?
It's hard to gauge these things. It's really hard. You need to have years of experience dealing with people, and you have to have good intuition. It's going to be very hard to gauge. For me, as a manager, I think it's very important to have someone who's competent, but it's somebody who is playful as well, has a playful side to them. That's the way I am. I'm a playful person. I like making jokes, little light pranks in the office, nothing that I'm going to get mad at me for. And I don't want to hire, when I'm hiring someone, if I have a choice of hiring two people, one is stiff and the other one is more relaxed, or as they say, chilled, and both have the same background, I will choose the chilled person. Why? Because I will feel more comfortable with them. Listen, if I'm working with you, I want to feel comfortable with you. Okay? Let's move on. Exhibit 2.2, 3 levels of organizational culture. All right? There's an alternate text here. I'm not sure what this slide means. Let's see. Let's look at the next slide. Ah, here it is. I don't know why they put that filler slide. That's a little bit awkward. I guess this was a beta version of the PowerPoint slide. Organizational culture and its effects. It's culture, motivation, and efficiency. Culture provides and encourages stability, Because it's a common, it kind of creates a commonality for everyone, which is very, very important. You have a baseline. You know what's accepted, and it. I don't know. Don't you feel comfortable following a certain path as opposed to sticking out? I mean, I think most people don't want to stick out unless they have to for conviction reasons. Like everyone's doing the wrong thing, they have to stand up for what's right. But I'm just saying, people do feel comfortable fitting in. I mean, I think so. Most people that I know don't want to be outliers. People that are considered to be, outside the camp of what is considered acceptable. So again, culture provides and encourages stability. The more employees share and accept the core values, the stronger the culture and the more influential it is on behavior. Creating organizational culture. Can culture be created and imposed? It is difficult to simply create core values. Imposed values are often met with resistance. Why? When I'm trying to impose something on you, you don't own it. Think about it. When do you change as an individual? When you want to. I can't change you. I could change myself. I could motivate you to change. I can tell you why I think you should change. But ultimately, if I force change down your throat, what happens? Dictators, right? While they're in power, they could wield the axe. They could, say, oh, you better do what I say or you'll end up in a gulag or a concentration camp or even worse, dead, immediate death. So everybody will follow party lines. Yes, Comrade Stalin. Yes, 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 Kim. Yes, 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 of course, of course. The minute that evil dictator drops dead, what happens? Let's start tearing his statues down. Look what happened with Saddam Hussein in the Second Gulf War. Saddam Hussein had an iron fist. He was terrified of him. Uday, Qusay, those crazy two sons of his, would rampage the countryside, murdering, raping, pillaging, torturing, right? The minute that he was gone, what happened to those big... Remember that iconic scene where that large statue is being schlepped down, right? There was somebody tied like a noose around his neck and connected the back of this like massive... It wasn't a rope, it was more like a metal cable to the back of an M1 Abrams tank, and they schlepped it down, right? That shows that those values were forced down people's throats, and as such, the minute that freedom reigned, those values were basically jettisoned. Values that are taken on because a person believes in them, he or she feels a certain sense of conviction, he or she loves those values, right? Holds them near and dear, those values last. And they're not easy to shed. That's why, if you've ever met, there are cults out there, and the people get devoted to cults, and they get brainwashed. So when you want to pull somebody out of a cultish kind of society, it's very difficult. Why? Why is it so difficult to schlep someone out of a cult, to bring someone out of a cult?
Because they've adapted the world.
Their worldview is that cult, and they love it. Whether let's not assume a cult of fear, but let's say it's a cult that basically preached love, and they love those values. Good luck in trying to change that person's feelings. It's not going to be an easy mission. Disparity between reality and a stated set of values creates confusion, irritation, and skepticism. People are not stupid. They're not going to just follow party line just because you said so. So if you're not afraid of the person, then you're going to become a skeptic. Even in totalitarian societies, there was skepticism, albeit very, very much, under the radar, squelched, if you will, but it did exist. And what happened? Why did we have communism overthrown, or any of these isms overthrown? Enough people